Let's get started back here. Thank you so much for that. I knew we'd say 5 minutes, it'd be 15, but thank you.
No problem. So, right, so I'll introduce myself again, I guess I should, for a couple of minutes. Okay, so I'm a management consultant, people who build and operate theaters, 35 years, started this practice 28 years ago, project 527. Short-term gigs, come to town, figure things out, speak truth to power, get out of the way. Did the feasibility study that encouraged you all to bring this theater back to life, and back now to write a strategic plan to guide the next 5 years. So I'm kind of 2/3 of the way through the process. What we've done is essentially our sort of situation analysis. What do we think is going on? So we've looked inside the theater and staff and the building and operations and programming. Other things, we've looked outside, the market, competition, broader forces and trends in the sector. We benchmarked the building against some other buildings like it in communities like this. We did a big set of confidential interviews with all sorts of folks connected to the city and the venue. I really like the mission statement for the theater. The problem is there's a disconnect between that and sort of day-to-day operations. And I think different people in the city have different views of what the priorities are, so I think there's some work to do to kind of bring everybody into alignment on that. The other thing that was really came out of the interviews is that most people believe that the theater has not yet lived up to its potential simply because it's not busy. So I went through all the activity and the financials. It's doing better each year, becoming a bit busier. I like the mix of programming, rentals, and presenting film and live work. The margins are improving on presenting, which is really the toughest part of this business, is sort of booking, touring, artists, and entertainment, and trying to make a bit more money than you spend to get there. So that's getting closer to a positive margin on some shows. The biggest skills problem is the lack of tools, skills, and resources around marketing and communication. There's really nobody on staff that knows how to do that or should know how to do that. And it creates lots of problems. There's low awareness of the theater, there's ticket sales and attendance at lots of events is just not where it should be. And you're not really taking advantage of all the information that arises when you're selling tickets and collecting data on customers. So that is the single biggest gap. Operating policies and practices are all pretty good, follow sort of general standards. I like kind of the ordering of priorities with presenting at the top and then movies, city functions on down. That all works pretty well. There's a very lean staff operating the theater with 3 full-timers and a few part-timers. And that's a real stretch for that team. There's a little bit of a volunteer corps, but not much, and an opportunity there to grow that. The building itself is great. I had a great tour of James and the team. We wandered around the building this morning. I was thrilled to see how it looks. I love the gallery space. The house itself is terrific. The backstage is in good shape. The building is well maintained. The basement, which is always a real telltale, the basement is spotless and dry. So I think that the team is doing a great job in maintaining the building. The single biggest problem with the building, which I really think is a function of the fact that it opened during COVID, is that it wasn't properly commissioned, meaning all of the equipment systems in the building, just nobody at that time was taking the time to make sure that everything worked the way it was supposed to work. So there's a lot of things in there that don't work properly, or that nobody really knows how to make them work. There's not enough information about warranties and systems, and there's a real sort of unfulfilled promise around the technical capabilities of the building. So that's important. So I want to slow down now a little bit, do my little SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Strengths and weaknesses are things inside, internal opportunities and threats are things outside. So the biggest strengths are it's a functional, flexible, and attractive venue. It looks great where it is, inside and outside. Great location in downtown Monroe, and a small but competent staff. Weaknesses, disconnect between mission and day-to-day operations, lack of marketing skills and resources, limited technical skills and resources, only moderate levels of activity achieved to date, limited use of financial tools, so there's too much of a distance between the kind of the city's finance department and function and the staff operating in the building. And that is somehow that there's not enough accountability and sort of awareness of sort of financial returns and expenses and revenues. And then there's sort of an unresolved food and beverage arrangement. There's sort of an arrangement, but it's not really working, and it's sort of pending some changes, and you're kind of missing out on both revenue and an amenity that would drive more business to the theater. Outside, I see a number of opportunities and threats. The market is growing and changing in ways that make it more likely to attract attenders to live arts and entertainment. There's very limited regional competition. The center has a very strong competitive position in the regional market. The growth in active arts opportunities of our world, we're in the middle of this shift away from passive art participation to active arts participation, meaning it's not just about sitting in a seat watching a show, it's about getting up on stage and being a part of it. And then finally, the other great thing that's happened in our sector in the last generation is the growth of arts education and how buildings and nonprofit organizations are leaping into the world of education and outreach, providing opportunities for creative expression to everyone and anyone. Threats, sort of the vulnerability around being a city facility and elected officials and sort of policy and practices being subject to sort of wild sort of changes and swings. Shifts in younger audiences are different than older audiences. They want to be more engaged. They don't like the old way we say, walk into the theater, sit down, face the front, turn everything off, be quiet, pay attention. If you want to know what it means, read the program. When it's over, up and at it. Remember, people want different kinds of experiences, more control, more engagement, and it's hard to give them that in a traditional venue. And also, we're dealing with the fragility of the nonprofit art sector. It's very tough for small artisan arts organizations to afford to use facilities and to sustain themselves. So all of that work has led us to make these recommendations, which is the work we'd like to continue with. Reaffirm the mission statement and a set of goals that are in line with the City of Monroe plans and planning. I think there's some work to do there. We are recommending the idea of forming an advisory board appointed by city leadership to provide more support with policies and planning, including the development of rental guidelines and annual programming and marketing plans. And that could be a subset of the sort of the Tourism Development Authority. Then consider restrictions on unaccompanied minors in all programs and events. We think that's a reasonable response to some of the programming challenges and problems with the kids sort of running around in the building. Partner with regional arts organizations and educators on the development of additional active arts and arts education programs in buildings. Consider restructuring the building and the way it's run as an enterprise fund. We think there's significant financial upside and really to bring some financial accountability to the building to change the way it's done. Expand the pool of active volunteers supporting programs and events. Add marketing skills, staffing resources, add technical skills, and then take better care of the equipment that's there. Set targets to increase overall levels of activity, including presented events, rentals, and so on. And then encourage more active arts programs in the building. So I can't imagine how many slides and bullet points you've looked at for the past 2 days. I want to give you one thought to hold on to as you think of this, of the Dow Center Theater. And this is a line I read in a newspaper article years ago about an old theater in a small town. And the line was, having a dark theater on Main Street is like having a corpse in your living room. It's dead and it's there. So that's your challenge here. You've done a great job in bringing the theater back to life. Now the challenge is to have the lights on as many days and nights of the year as you can in order to achieve the value that the theater can bring to your community. I think young people want to see that. They want to see the vibrancy in downtown Monroe that's already begun. I think companies that are considering locating to Monroe want to see this as an active amenity that will make them want to locate their businesses here. I think artists and arts organizations want to see an active and affordable venue to bring their creativity and cultural heritage. I think downtown businesses want to see activity to support their businesses. And most importantly, I think voters and taxpayers want to see the maximum return on the investment that you've already made. So I think then what we would like to do is to continue working on these recommendations with your, I will look forward to receiving some feedback from you all on the work that we've done to date. And with your blessing, I will continue to flesh out these recommendations, most importantly, within the context of a pro forma operating budget. What do we think you could do in order to drive more activity? What does that mean in terms of additional staffing and other expenditures? And how then does that drive earned revenue and contributed income in order to make the venue sustainable for the long term for your community? Thank you. Questions?
Doug, Mayor, if I could piggyback right quick. Sure. So some of these decision points are things that we would really like to get direction. And as Duncan enters the home stretch of this plan, so we can bring that back to you. So we have that direction now. So it doesn't bring that plan back and it doesn't align with some of the things that you want. We want to make sure that his plan incorporates a direction from you all. So the age restriction. What age are you looking at? Do you want Duncan to bring back particular ages and just generalities like that? So we're here to answer questions. We want this to be open, and again, myself, Duncan, and Mr. Vesher here as well.
Right, and Pete, so I don't know that you mentioned, so there is a big fat report that we've created that's about a 70-slide deck that has a lot of information, summarizes the process that we went through, all of the analysis and research that hopefully Pete will distribute to you all after today.
We have it very similar to the golf. I will make sure you all get these digitally. But yeah, we have all that information for you to look at.
Council, any suggestions for direction, Mr. Tony?
I'll start. I would like to see us move forward with maybe a board to include city participation and, and it could be a sub-board from the tourism advisory board or authority board, but I just think having some other people to give input about how they want the theater to operate, I think that's key. I think because it is for the community, and I feel like having people who are interested in the arts can bring value in helping us to determine what that looks like. So I would start with that. And another thing that I think we need to do is to make it an age restriction where, I would love for us to make it 18 and older without, you got to be 18. But if you're under 18, you got to be accompanied by an adult. Because personally, I've been at an event and I've seen kids in there just causing havoc on the seating, noise, and I think to combat that, we have to put an age restriction on it or make it such that if you are under 18, you are accompanied by an adult for a couple of reasons, to not destroy the theater and also for conduct.
If I may address the first part, the board. So we talked about an option of a subset of the tourism board, but one of the things that we've talked about years ago and even recently as earlier this year is developing a 501c3, a Friends of the Center, and possibly making that science center and theater based, and having that as a nonprofit advisory board that not only advises, but helps to raise money from the private sector to support our facility. So I think that something can be done, but I think if we do a 501c3, then structure it the right way to where the city can benefit from that, could help in that regard.
I think that's an excellent idea, and those are attending the October 22nd tour at Newberry can ask questions of their group of how they have formed a guild, which falls into that description of local community leaders and members of the arts community who help promote the theater and fundraise. And then a component part is a group of docents who would be more volunteers, who would actually assist in any and all events, whenever the doors open or even when there are not events, so that there are volunteers there to open the doors, to offer you a smile, to offer you a tour, to make you feel welcome at the Dowd and hand you the program and welcome you back. And of course, the docents are not the fundraisers or the people giving money. They would be paid for the joy of helping out, and also they would get tickets to events that they were interested to go to. So very much approve.
And Newberry operates as a 501c3, but they do have that supportive guild level.
Yeah, the guild is crucial to their success.
I like the idea of the 501c3, and I like the idea of also having to raise money, but then I want you to be careful. If I remember back, the problem that we had naming the science center, because people that raised money, they felt that they owned it, and that's the danger there. So when we select the people for the 501c, let it be a diverse group of people, not just those that have money.
Yeah, it would be a cross-section. We would structure it through our legal team. It's not uncommon, but we would have to structure it in a way to where the city inevitably has a very large amount of say and control in that process.
If we raised money, private money, would that mean that that those individuals or those private businesses would necessarily have the opportunity to utilize the facility? So in other words, would we have to open it up to whoever donated?
Unless it's specifically agreed upon in their donation, and I will defer to our expert legal folks. When somebody makes a donation to a cause without specification, we have that money. Now, if there's specifications attached to that donation that we agree upon, then yes. But for example, the Dow Foundation donated that money. They don't want to be involved in the operation of the theater. You know?
And that was just kind of piggybacking on what Mr. Lou said. The other question is, I know you were talking about kind of action points. You know, I think that we were left with the idea that we were going to get an attendance policy together, which addresses the, under 18, and then we would have better rental leases or rental contracts at some point before we decided what we were going to do with it. So I think that that's one of those things that
We're not done with the process.
Oh, okay.
Duncan's done a lot of the initial work, but we want to, again, so that's a key point, and I think that's something our legal team can look at and tighten up our things. But, Councilman McGee's talking about under 18. Is that something that the group as a whole want us to incorporate into our operating procedures?
I can only speak for myself, but I think that was initially, I think that's where some of the problems are. We're running it as a movie theater, but we're not operating it as a movie theater. And it is taxpayer money, so we have to be careful, I believe, with, the things that we have there, the things that, actually are shown there. But I think to the extent that if we had an attendance policy that was more like the other movie theaters that's here in Monroe, you can't be under the age of 18 and not be accompanied by a parent or guardian there. And I'm not even sure if it's after 8 or after an hour. I think it's period. It may be 7 p.m. But to make a long story short, we have to have that. If we're going to show movies, if that's what we're going to do, then we need to have an attendance policy similar to movie theater.
That's low hanging fruit. We can incorporate that tomorrow. You know what I mean? If that's the direction,
I think we'll do it.
Another thing I'm looking for here, Duncan, did you mention something about possibly running this as an enterprise fund?
Yes.
Okay, can you elaborate a little bit on that for me? Because I kind of like that idea a little bit personally, and if you can elaborate more, that'd be great.
Right, so I'm not exactly sure the rules of how it works in the city of Monroe, but there are examples here of parts of the city that are an enterprise fund. This is not, so
Yeah.
what are, so the golf course,
so now an example would be the aquatic center.
Right.
So money raised within the theater stays with the theater.
There you go.
And it basically will, Lisa's coming up, but basically run the same way. If we're in a deficit, it's going to be covered by the general fund anyway. So, Lisa, you want to address that?
No,
That's a
this-
big assumption right there.
Yeah,
Okay.
this cannot operate as an enterprise fund.
Can't?
This is a general fund division. We do keep the money for the theater with the theater. We have it in its own segregated account, just like we do the golf course. So when we look at it, we can tell if it's making a profit or a loss, but it does not qualify as an enterprise fund in government accounting.
Okay.
So Lisa, if we hit home runs and we generate $1 million revenue, that goes back into the general fund.
Stays with the theater.
Stays
Let's
with
do it in that fund, in that designated fund.
Okay.
According to the policies that the city council, the financial policies that the city council adopts, is that right?
Correct.
So
And
you
we
set
do
up-
that for the
set up
golf
the
course.
fund.
From year to year, like at the end of the year, when you close that out, and this is good for me to notice. So at the end of the year, we have additional revenue from the theater above our operating costs.
Moves forward.
So it's basically kind of like an enterprise fund already.
It's just-
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Like if you make money at the golf course, say you make, $100,000, you have $150,000 in capital, that you've requested. We're gonna use your money before we use general fund. But we're still putting your money back into your operation.
I think one of the things is, so, and this is an issue that we've had during the budgeting process. And so programming money, like programming money, we spend $100,000 in programming. We don't equate the revenue from those programming kind of line items to line items. That revenue comes as a bigger pool of general revenue for the theater.
It comes right back in the theater.
Right, but
Ticket sales.
But the two lines don't get compared to each other. Am I making, and I'm not critical, I'm just asking for,
I mean, we could compare them if you wanted to.
Okay.
Usually, the staff for those functions takes their financials
Yeah.
and they'll dissect them and, look at those individual
Okay.
items. But, we've met with the staff and
Yeah.
I don't know that there's a real good understanding
right, I agree.
of how the stuff comes in and out, so.
Yeah, I think that's the big issue, is that we need to do some work to improve the understanding between city staff and the operations team of the theater on various line items in the budget and accounting and annual sort of targets around performance.
And
So
what-
it's being like an enterprise fund without being an enterprise fund. I think that's the idea.
And is this a performing arts theater or a movie theater? We need to clear that first. Oh,
Well, I mean, like many buildings like this, they do both. And most buildings of this size and shape do a combination of live presenting, meaning touring Lee Greenwood and that type. They present film, and then they have rentals. And sometimes they also they bring kids in for more sort of active arts education programs. So we think all four of those kinds of activity are important. The fourth one is where is the weakest part of it right now, but we think the other three are all four of them are really important. And other buildings sustain themselves by finding that the right mix of that program.
So it is a performing arts theater.
It is a performing arts venue. It is a performing arts venue that does film as well.
That offers diverse programs.
Yes.
So the question is, what's the right mix?
Right.
So I may be overgeneralizing, but I do recall several months ago when we were having this discussion that it was like 75% private rental. So
Yeah.
is that like, what, that seems to be.
I don't think that number is accurate, and we can get that percent. So to go back to the question, so when city council enacted the moratorium on our private rentals, we moved into, I call the movies low-hanging fruit. We could do the movies, they're inexpensive, we could get them out there. So we had something going on, we established, and I think we've been fairly successful with that Thursday, Saturday, and our genre of movies. But as you look at that slide a couple ago, you know, 154 use days in 2024, that's a lot. That's a lot on a 3-person staff for a theater. So our initial vision for the theater, we put the movie projector, we put the projectors in. We don't have wings, so to speak, on the stage, but we enlarge the stage as much as we can. We know we can't do big theatrical productions. We can do music, we can do stand-up, we can do small concerts, small, single set, double set productions, and I could let James kind of tell you what our capabilities are. But we want to be that diverse, multi-use venue. And within that, do we want to do rentals or do we want to do our own programming, which is, you know, we got Vegas McGraw tonight, you know, for you country folks, come on out. We got Ambrosia, we got P.O. Bryson, we've got Beatles tribute. We've got a lot of really good events coming up in our busy season. So we can continue to do that. We're doing these events. And that's not a problem. We opened it up to the rentals because we felt that was a way that will help sustain us financially, as well as bring other folks into the downtown area. So we're throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks, and we're finding our niche in different areas.
Right, and so that would basically open up discussion here for council on that number 6, the operating policies and practices, private, individual, or corporate bookings. What are y'all's thoughts on that?
I think staffing seems like the biggest issue. There's no one doing PR. There's no one who seems to have mastery of the audio-visual equipment. And a maestro to oversee all of it seems to be lacking. And meetings don't seem to have a lack of clarity. It seems like from the head of finance being here, it seems like there have been many meetings that have been held about, you know, debits and credits, and they're not clear. So it seems to me like we need someone at the top of the pyramid over there, because we're not theater managers. We're not public relations experts. I think we could all agree we want the Dow to succeed. We want it to be available. We want to promote the arts. We like a mixed use, but I think we need someone credentialed to be running it, because we are not that person.
I think we do have I guess deficit's the best word to use. We need to figure that out, as well as our attendance policy that was mentioned, and strengthening that end of it. And then if we're truly a performing arts center and offering all these different things, and I only commend you all for filling in the gaps, because we've enjoyed it. We've been there several times, and doing that even better would be great. I'm looking forward to the October 22nd educational field trip we're going to have. I think that's going to help. But if with these things listed on the slide, the 6 things that are the priorities we're using now, I think if we're going to, this is my personal opinion, we need the direction at the top, the management at the top. Not to say those who are doing it now are not doing a good job, but everybody being on the same page and trained. And then do we want, or are we going to have room for private, individual, and corporate bookings? Do we need to make that decision? Do we even have, if it's going to be a performing arts center, is that even on the table? And if it's on the table, then how does it need to be structured policy-wise so no one's confused about how that works? I mean, that's my thought.
I think that, that makes use, I think we do have room for corporate bookings, local and regional civic gatherings. It's all in scheduling.
That's all it matters.
That's all.
And policy, yeah.
We've had, I'm going to defend our staff. We have good management of the staff. It's operating a theater in a city vacuum is very different than operating a theater through a nonprofit, through Newberry. Newberry has about 15 full-time staff people, and they've been around for 100 years almost. So it's been a long time. So we're still learning. We don't know everything, but when you open it up to private bookings, it's like we all went through with the city parks. You open it up to private bookings, you're opening that up to everybody, unless we have strict policies in there, and I'll defer to Mr. Long and Mr. Scholler on how to guide us in those policies. And we will enforce it, we will promote it any way we can, any way that you guys direct us to.
I have a real favor to ask because this is starting to smell like food trucks. I think we need direction from the top of somebody who knows how to run a diverse performing arts theater. That's not us.
I would say this. Listen, you're right, we don't know how to run a theater, but we can make a simple decision, all right? I think we can figure out what type of diverse performing arts or performers or singers or jugglers or magicians, we can control that. We can bring in that type of diversity without bringing in controversy for the most part. And I think when we start doing private, individual, and corporate bookings, that we open ourselves up to having issues in what goes in there. And again, we have to have an attendance policy. We have to have some rules in place before we do anything else. And I think that we as a city have done a pretty decent job this last few months of getting performers in there, that appeal to everyone. Right, and we can reach out to the arts community and have art, and we've had an art review in there, and I don't see what this is not difficult.
Right.
It's really not that difficult. You put an attendance policy in place, you determine whether you want private or corporate bookings or you don't, and then we get the right people in place and we just move on with life. It's really, we're making it way more difficult than it has to be. I think you just figure out whether you want private bookings or not, get the rules in place, and let it go.
I think adding the age restrictions will kind of help actually with all of this. Because art is different for everybody, right? But adding an age restriction, as an adult, if I want to enter this event, I can do that. And so it gives people autonomy to kind of go and see what they want. But the age restriction, I think, is key because you don't have to worry about things being offensive for a kid or all of those things. So if you start with the age restriction component, then that, to me, would take care of a lot of the issues and controversies that we have, because now people can't say we're not protecting children, all these things, because you have age restrictions on it, and the people that are have entered as adults, and they are more than welcome to see whatever events that we have at the Dow Theater. So I think that should be the priority, and then we should move forward in that direction.
So
Absolutely.
there are some relatively straightforward policies we can help you with, but my caution is that I think There are lots of policy things that are complicated, and there are new policy things and challenges that will emerge. So I think more important than having policy is having a means and a mechanism to develop and agree on policy. Because there are these things that are going to keep coming up, and the unfortunate thing is if it keeps coming back to city council, which then really distracts you and diverts you from a lot of things that you really should be with.
The reality, I just want to say something. Reality is that this has got to be sufficient removal of everyone here and where we are right now. The fact of the matter is that I see this as being after us. What are we going to be known for at the Dow? What are we going to be known for in Monroe? And what I mean by that is setting that type of, and I think that you touched on it a little bit, is what is the vision overall for the Dow?
Right.
And that then carries on, that's where you can start peeling that onion, right? Where, because then all these things will just start snowballing also, right? Where, you can get into the weeds and all these other things.
Well, no, as you say, mission becomes vision,
That's right.
becomes goals, become policy, right? So that's the work that it is reasonable for this group to step back to is, let's all make sure we agree on
The mission.
and
Yes.
vision for the theater, and then let's let that carry forward into goals and policy, and let's create this advisory group that can support you in making sure that there's the right connection between the operation of the venue and your desires as a city.
I'm going to tell you that the biggest thing that I see is something that Pete has said a couple of times. And I don't take that as being a part of who I am as the mayor or as who we are as the council, is the possibility for the mission and the goal of the theater to sway after every single election. You don't want that. That's unhealthy for any city. What we want to be able to do is put something in motion together that where it continues to keep thriving, because if every 4 years or every 2 years we have to reevaluate this process, it's going to be tiresome, and then eventually what will happen is the city as a whole, I believe, will lose out on the business potential. Because that's what we want. We're trying to use this as a driver for our city, as a way to do that. And I think that if we can agree on what that mission statement is for the Dow, then I think that will help us understand personally, that will help us understand what type of leadership we need, what type of goals will come after that. And I think that then it will ultimately fade into the programming, because we're going to know that from the mission.
Yeah, well said.
Is that a mission statement now?
We do.
I thought it was.
If you want to take a look at that and give us a starting point, we're happy to, should be one of the early ones. Yeah.
To explore the boundaries of community, culture, and education by providing unique and diverse entertainment opportunities and experiences for the citizens of Monroe, Union County, and the region. So,
That's what we want to do.
But you mentioned something was missing from the current mission statement.
well, I think that the issue is, I think it's being interpreted and differently, and priorities, different people have different priorities within that. So there's some work to do to kind of tighten it up, and then to take it to that next step. But what does that actually mean from a vision perspective, and then from a goals perspective, and then policy?
The mission statement should be a header for a list of actions over the course of 5 years in a strategic plan. Here's the mission, here are the actions, the implementation, so that there's no ambiguity about what the goal of the organization is. That's how I was trained in strategic planning. Okay, Mr. Carr? I have an MFA in directing. I've been doing this 30 or 35 years. I ran an academic department for 10 of those years with 16 faculty, 110 students. I have a background in community organizing in relation to theater. If that's not a qualification to run a performing arts center, I'm not sure what is. And I would just say this as an open invitation to the council. I have now, I'm short now about 3 days of being with the city, 5 years. I've been through 3 city managers, 3 rounds of elections, and in those 5 years, only one city official, Councilwoman Anthony, has come to the theater to dialogue with us and to ask us why we're doing what we're doing. So I would just lay that out to you as a challenge. Please, before you go to Newbury Opera House, that has a full-time staff of 7 people, and to try to apply that standard to our theater that has 3 completely overworked people. And now we're talking about not having a theater that has enough activity. Give us an hour of your time, come to the theater, we'll serve you coffee, we'll buy you lunch, and we will walk you through the challenges that we are facing. The last thing I will say is, with all due respect, the current configuration of Newbury Opera House is about 30 years, in addition to the 100. So they sort of renewed themselves. We have been in operation less than 3 years, and part of that was compromised by COVID. So with all due respect to the council, your expectations for this venue at this moment are completely out of line with the resources that we have, our budget, our staffing, and all of the expectations about what we're required to do. And lastly, the proportion of rentals I will send that to you if you like. What the information you received was back-weighted because most of our rentals kick in the spring, when we have graduations and we have theater companies that come through with the culmination of their work. So I think it would be helpful to you see what life on the ground is like. To come to the theater and talk to us about how we're dealing with the theater and why we made the decisions that we made. I was at the council. Franco, you were there. Sir Ludi, you were there 3 years ago. We walked through an entire fee schedule. It was unanimously approved by the council at that time. We submitted, we vetted through legal all of our rental policies, and I agree with Pete. I work for the city, and my work is relative to that. But we are barely at the beginning of a sort of trying to build a theater, a performing arts center.
First of all, I want to commend your comments, speaking with the passion that you have about theater and art. And I do think that we should take an opportunity to come and sit with the staff to see exactly how we can support you in those efforts. I mean, you know, I do feel like it's unfair that we're going somewhere else to try to fix something that we have here. We have not had a conversation with the staff here yet. And so I think that's the first step. Or if we do go somewhere else, I still feel like we need to come and speak to the staff here and figure out how we can support the efforts to make sure this is going to be a success, because I feel I'm very passionate about this facility as well. I mean, I grew up going to the cemetery. It means a lot to me and my family, and I wanted to succeed, but I also feel like we have to talk to the people that are in the trenches who are doing the work to make sure that we're giving them support that they need to assure that it's going to be successful, and I'm not sure if we've done that.
I don't really have. I think James is excellent choice. I just think he doesn't have enough staff. And reading this mission statement, I find the mission statement, maybe it needs to be tightened up some, but as I read, that's exactly what the Performing Arts does for our community. Now, I'm going to Newberry, but I wasn't going to be a teacher to trying to make, I was the one. I wasn't going to be the preconceived notions. It's a trip.
When Duncan and his team did our initial plan, it was a 5-year plan to get to where we should be. And please, James is passionate, borderline out of line, passionate, but this is something I've heard from him for a while. He's very passionate about this theater and its success. So COVID, we're not going to blame COVID, but we're in year 2 of building where we need to be. We want to be where you all want us to be. So give us the direction that you want us to do, and we'll do it. So,
We got to give ourselves time to get there, you know, it'll take a while, we gotta grow into it, still in its infancy.
Let's start with the things that we all can agree on. We know there needs to be an attendance policy. Let's just get an attendance policy written. It's not that hard. We can steal it from the, I can get you a copy of it from the other. So we'll do that. We'll do that. I think the first thing that we can,
You want attendance on each part.
well, an attendance policy that includes age. I mean, there needs to be some other things in there, not just the age, so there should be some other things in there as well. And I would be curious on what a board would look like. I mean, I think that that's probably a good idea to have a board, but, you know, that, what would it look like? Who would be on it? How would it be organized? Those are things that right this moment we're not going to be able to figure out. Right? And I truly appreciate the comments as well, that, you know, we're new to this too. Right? I've never ran a movie theater, I've never ran a performing arts center. So I mean, we're kind of figuring it out as we go. And I agree, if we need to put more effort into the staff, meeting with the staff, then that's something we're all approachable. I would be more happy to have a discussion with anybody. I've been there several times, and you know, if they want to reach out to us, we're approachable to do that. We can take a tour and do all of those things. But again, I would say this: I think we're making it more difficult than it needs to be.
And another thing we're doing, once the policies and everything is established, we need to step back and let them take care of it. We're not running it. I think we're missing that point.
Listen, you know, sometimes to grow, right, you have to have uncomfortable conversations. Okay? You know, it's just the reality. What we're sitting here doing is everyone here cares about the direction of the city, just we might have all different visions. The thing that, you know, I encourage everyone to keep doing is to keep working with the same type of passion, right? Because the reality here is that there is deficiencies, right? We just need to fill them. And that's what we're here to do today. And that's what we're here, you know, spending 2 days because we care, right? We care about the direction of this city. We care enough. Every single one of the employees back here, we don't all agree on everything. But see, what this is this is creating conversation. Because that's how, as a city, we move forward. Is we are able to have sometimes uncomfortable conversations. And I'm thankful for that, to be honest, because then that's how sometimes we shed light on other situations. You know, Mr. James, I've been to the theater multiple times. We've not talked, you know, about operations on that, right? And so we can continue to keep shedding light by opening up conversations, even though sometimes they're difficult. So from this, though, now that all that's been said, we need to give Mr. Duncan I'm still hearing different things.
And I'm curious, you're hired on what kind of contract for what kind of term?
It's a fixed fee based on delivering a scope of services.
Hired by
City?
the city of Monroe?
Yes. Yep. So, just so, and I've fulfilled about 2/3 of that scope. The last part is getting down to the details of policy and really budgets and programming, operating policy, and financial.
I'm just going to interject myself in this conversation unnecessarily. And I know that. But you had a list of 6 things.
Yes.
Your most troublesome fall there is going to be your private notes.
That's right.
And that's going to be your most troublesome issue to deal with. So why don't you deal with the things right now that you know that you can work on and and then you'll have to tackle your private rental issue. Maybe later, you're not going to resolve that here today.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I would also hope that you all will see the work that we've done that I've summarized today. I want to feel like I should give you some time to review that, and I will create an opportunity to circle back with members of council, either feedback coming back through you, Pete, or through the manager. But, you know, I wouldn't want you to feel like today you need to say, this is the direction. I want today you just say, okay, now maybe we have a better sense of what the big tough issues are we've got to grapple with. We're going to read the work, we're going to think about it some more, and we're going to provide me, a direction I need to move forward.
And sometimes it's not as easy as saying private, individual, and corporate bookings, because there are many partners in the community, for example, like the Symphony, like the Playmakers, SPCC, public school, that we have partnerships, we have kind of arrangements with, and if we eliminate these corporate bookings, that goes away as well. So there has to be a way to still be able to have the Symphony there, and I'm going to put that in the hands of our attorneys to help us with that, maybe fairly or unfairly. But if we see great value in those partnerships, and we have to figure out a way to navigate that.
But is it a way that we can keep the corporate bookings and maybe kind of revisit the private individual bookings? You know,
Mr. Long?
Rentals or rentals?
Yeah, rentals are rentals, but look, the idea is you're not going to resolve that here today. That's what I'm
Right.
telling you.
Right.
That is not going to happen to y'all today. It's just not. I don't disagree that you can't partner with the Symphony and things like that. Why wouldn't you do that? But, you know, this has been part of our issue going forward since, well, we're dealing with that here. But the idea is, you got a lot of other things up there to talk about. You got a lot of other things to give direction on. You got a lot of things that you got, you know, a staff that is working really hard to do some things with the constraints that have been put upon them. And let's try to move forward with what's being proposed right here, and we'll tackle that last issue. But y'all are not going to resolve this here today, I promise.
I need to interject here. The reason we're here today is because I directed staff to go out and begin a strategic planning process. And I heard from staff about the shortfalls in staffing and the staffing needs and the technical needs that need to be, that we need to add at the theater. But there was no plan. That is the reason we're here today. And I think that the things that have been called out here are right on point. They're right on point. They needed to be put on paper. This is not finished, okay? But I do think we are at the beginning of the next phase of this process.
Yeah, this is not the proposal by any stretch of the
No,
imagination.
no.
I know, it's not.
So this is the analysis.
Yes.
This is verifying for us some of the shortcomings, some of the opportunities, some of the things that we know need to be addressed in order to make this venue successful and be what we all know it can be. So this is my recommendation. Okay? In order to connect all the dots here, you've already seen a really good example between the understanding of a financial process and the realities of a financial process. We need to connect those dots. We need to close those gaps of understanding. Okay? If we don't, we're going to be sitting here this time next year having the same conversation. I would recommend that there be a subcommittee of council, whether that's 2 or 3 members, to work along with your professional staff to take this list and start at one end and go all the way through it and bring back, whether that's operational policies, whether that, and that could include, when I say operational policies, I'm talking about financial policies, you know, how the funds are set up, how the accounting works, you know, all of that kind of thing, down to recommendations for policies, whether it's what shows get booked, to who can attend without adult supervision, you know, whatever. Bring that back for the council to approve and see what, to approve, period. And because the bottom line is, and the city owns this facility. Y'all are responsible, I'm responsible for this facility.
Well, I would echo all of that and say to Richard's point, what he was saying too, is something we were just talking about a little bit ago, which is, this is like the only time all of us can legally get together and discuss things. And that's what part of this is the ability to have dialogue openly with all of us at one time and not have to, you know, text message, sometimes call, all that type of stuff. So, you know, this is really good. Now, can I ask, are you suggesting a group or like an approved mayoral's small ad hoc committee of 3 council members?
Mayoral committee, call it
A
an
city-
ad hoc. A mayoral committee is an ad hoc committee of
Yes.
council, is it not?
Okay.
So I would say it's a
Something
mayoral
like that?
committee, but that is made up of council members and your professional staff and this consultant. Let's work through all of these things, sit down at the table, hash all this out, because that has not happened. We can work through the staffing plan. We can build a budget. We can do all these things. We are capable of doing this.
Got it. So why don't we, do I hear a motion to make a ad hoc mayoral committee? Okay? Do we want to go ahead and, so I have a motion, a second. Before we vote, do we need to name those members
No, y'all can discuss it among yourselves.
and then add that too?
I mean, if you want to name the member, ask for volunteers. You usually ask for volunteers. That's usually the way.
Okay. Well, y'all two, I mean. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so I have a motion and a second for an ad hoc committee with James as, you'll chair it, because you're not a chair yet, right? So let's do that. Do y'all agree with that? And then y'all two on there? You okay with that? Okay.
So I will be appointing staff to the
Okay.
committee.
Okay. Okay. Yep, and so all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. I will, I'll follow up with the city manager, set up our first meeting soon. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you.
Mayor, members of council, we have one item that's a left on the agenda, and it's a discussion of downtown parking. Mr. Mayor, I'll defer to you as to how we handle this and the rest of the afternoon.
The downtown parking? Okay.
We're discussing?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Good afternoon, Lisa Stuyvesant, Director of Planning and Development. Been asked to come here today to hold a discussion for downtown parking. I'll go over here, I'm a little short. Joining me in the discussion today will be Sarah McAllister, Engineering Director, for any maybe missing information that I may miss during or answer any questions about downtown parking that she may be more familiar with. And then also Bryson Hester, he's our new transportation planner. He's been here a little over 5 weeks, so we're very excited to have a position that will solely focus on transportation, and he'll be joining with any questions as well. So downtown, parking in downtown has been a topic of interest for many years, and it goes back to 2008. There was a recommendation in the downtown master plan. Then also in 2010, the city consulted with a McLaurin a parking and transportation firm, to evaluate the city's parking supply in downtown, and as well as to look at the employing a parking system fee for the purpose of enhancing the use of city-owned parking to cover the maintenance cost, insurance costs, and to advance revenue opportunities. That, since it was in 2010 and then the downturn in the economy kind of hit, so the city did not move forward with that study at that time. And then as well as in 2022, a parking assessment and feasibility study was performed to evaluate the city's existing and future supply and demand opportunities and challenges, as well as provide recommendations regarding the parking organization structure, mobility improvements, parking enforcement, parking rates, and time limits. And then also the last General Service Committee, there were some ideas about parking within the downtown that came up as well. So as I mentioned before, a downtown parking study was conducted in 2022 or in 23. It was brought before City Council. Unfortunately, it was not adopted at that time. I was not part of the parking study or the planning process, so I did review the City Council minutes to understand some of the reasons why the study was not adopted. What I could find was that the parking inventory within downtown wasn't inclusive, and then it was mentioned that the parking study wasn't quite comprehensive. So what Planning and Development has done is an analysis. We perform an analysis of the draft study just to be more familiar with it. And what we determined is that the parking study determined that parking inventory was non-inclusive. The city comparison analysis was limited. Felt the public involvement should be a little bit more comprehensive, and then lacked some important elements within that study. Although the parking study was not adopted, we did find there were some acceptable recommendations for consideration, possibly moving forward. Also, the engineering department did update the downtown parking inventory map. Let's find my notes. And what it determined that there's a total of public parking, I believe 1,154 parking spaces. And then our on-street public parking spaces, there's approximately 373. The inventory map, in my opinion, shows that the city of Monroe does have an ample amount of parking. We are in a good position because we do own most of the majority of the parking lots within downtown. As I mentioned before, the transportation planner did assist in this analysis or research, and he looked at about 21 municipalities to compare and evaluate what type of parking that they had. And what we found was the research that we conducted compared other municipalities, and what we were looking for, do they have a downtown? Did they conduct a parking study? What type of parking do they have in downtown? Is it paid? Is it free? Is there time constraints? Is there leased parking or permitted parking? And then what type of enforcement? Do they do enforcement? Do they hire outside enforcement, or is it done by a particular department? Another step that staff has taken is we have, planning staff has advertised a request for qualifications for on-call transportation and traffic consulting services. The purpose of this was to solicit professional transportation planning and engineer firms for an on-call open-ended contract for as-needed professional transportation services for citywide. So we would retain a professional planning and engineering, transportation planning and engineering firm to carry out various different transportation initiatives.
So the City of Concord does this also, right?
We found that the City of Concord does this. Bryson, what were some other municipalities that had the on-call? Orange County, I know, was one of them.
Orange County had one, Cary had one.
Cary had one. So in some of the example projects that they would do would be surveying, construction design, cost estimates, feasibility studies, construction bids, so various different transportation consulting services that could be used for citywide. So what staff believes is we have a good framework, or we're in a good position to possibly update the study that we currently have. For various different reasons. One, we have 7 proposals that were submitted for the on-call transportation consulting services that we could possibly, once we select, we haven't gone through the selection process yet, but once a firm was selected, they could possibly pick up the existing transportation parking study and evaluate it to see the missing pieces. We have a new transportation planner that any action items that were to come out of that study, if it were to be approved or moved forward, could begin implementation. We have the revised parking inventory map. We've done the city comparison analysis for other municipalities, and what we found by doing that, we looked at, most of the municipalities that we looked at were in North Carolina. We evaluated about 21, and there were several that had really good parking studies, and we formed some really great contacts or resources that we could reach out and ask a lot of questions if we were to move forward with this process. We also do have a little bit of money in the budget. We had a difficult time finding a transportation planner for a while, so we did ask to utilize that existing funding and move it forward so we could possibly use it for a future project. So there is money in the budget to perform an updated parking study. So what we're asking today is we're seeking consensus from the City Council in a couple ways. Are you interested in updating that parking study? And then also, as I mentioned before, there were some short-term parking solutions or recommendations that were identified in the existing parking study. And then also there was one brought before the General Service Committee in August of a possible, one example of a short-term solution would be to possibly look at leased or paid parking within the downtown. That's just one example, but so we're looking for a consensus. Are you interested in moving forward with a parking study that potentially could be up to 12 months, maybe be up to 50,000? And then in the meantime, we could look at some short-term parking solutions over the next few months and bring those ideas back before this council for consideration. I'll be happy to answer questions. Yes, ma'am.
That's what I was thinking is, can it be done in less than 12 months? Because I think that's one of the issues that plagued the last
study was, by the time it was, and it lasted longer than 12 months.
Yeah, it did.
By the time it was completed, it was completely stale. And I know you listed some of the areas or the things that could have possibly been, could have been stronger in that study, but can it be done in less than 12 months?
I would imagine, I looked at the time frame for this parking study, and it looked like it did almost take 2 years to complete. I would imagine there's a possibility it could be less than 12 months because the foundation is there. And once we have so if we move forward with the consulting firm for the on-call transportation, they could evaluate it and bring back some more time frames. But in the meantime, we could move forward with some short-term parking solutions and for implementation while we're working on the update to the study. This was my best guess at how long it would take. That's probably I probably was, stretched it out a little just to be safe.
And council, that, one of the reasons why we're talking about this is a major concern in the community. This along with the roads and transportation, and so that's why we discussed getting this on here today to discuss openly about downtown parking, right? And specifically because there's, we sent out basically not even a real survey, but a social media post, and this along with the roads and other things has been one of the major concerns downtown.
So is it really I mean, I go to Charlotte downtown all the time. I gotta walk the blocks. I know we're not Charlotte, but, we have, what, 1,154, what was that number?
Is it 1,154 public parking and then about 343 or 73 on-street parking?
And to my point, so I think Monroe people are spoiled that they want to pull right up to the front doors and enter into their destinations. And so, if we want to do a study, that's fine, but I guess the reality is that we have parking in downtown.
Well, I think that here's what I would say to that too. I think that if you look at the overall spaces, I think that some things to consider in this is that I've heard multiple times that those residents that are downtown, when there's special events like they're going on today, a lot of them don't leave because they will lose their parking space and things like that, and how to kind of remedy that more so than like the actual parking spaces, and possibly even this might translate into more like wayfinding, because it's like what Junior said yesterday. It's all about what things are perceived as, right? And if we have this idea that we have terrible parking, but we really don't, maybe there's some open parking spaces and parking lots there, then maybe we do better at putting signage out and letting people around the city know that there are these parking spaces and that can be part of it too.
Or entertaining assigned parking spaces for.
I think so. I think maybe start entertaining that with people.
And those are, sorry, go ahead.
With Bryson, and welcome.
Thank you.
Since we do know where the parking lots are, we know the number of spaces, and we know that we're busy, right? Which is great. Do we really need a study?
Fair.
I don't know about study, we probably make a season of the time and it's gonna cost, that's.
Or a plan. That's really just more plan.
I mean, could you look in-house and decide whether or not you think we should do 2-hour parking and maybe look at the proposal of doing 1-year leases for business owners and building owners?
And then do we, from this discussion, help direct the police department in helping enforce that as well?
Can this be something that doesn't come
Yeah.
That's just a
And-
question.
And could we
And I'm
look
not
at trying the leased parking to get the business and building owners off of the street parking?
These are all good ideas that have been brought up at some point in time. Some of those are some ideas within the parking study that wasn't adopted, and in other municipalities' parking studies. And they are, it's Staff believes we do have an ample amount of parking, and I think it's more of how we organize that parking. Whether it's more enforcement or it's lease spaces, and those are all some short-term ideas that we can bring back more in detail for your discussion, but those were some of the ideas that we were kind of trying to look for consensus of bringing a plethora of short-term ideas back within a 3 or 4 month time frame for your consideration.
Is it possible for us to see the study that we didn't complete or didn't pass? I have no clue what it says.
We got a copy. Just provide a copy to,
Sure.
send an electronic copy out.
Yes, okay, so, I don't know, being that it's not urgent, can we take it until we get an opportunity to at least read that? I mean,
It's whatever direction this council is looking to move forward.
Okay. Can we, I mean, for those who haven't seen the plan, or we need to see the plan just to give ourselves a baseline of what that generated and didn't generate, which, or doesn't apply anymore. That's the case. Could we do that along with your second and third bullet points? And then, is it possible, and I know it's fine, I just don't know, is it possible that we do our own study in-house instead of spending the money? Now, even if you got, I know you got the money, but could it be utilized a different way, or, and that, no, it's fine, I'm asking.
I know it's fine.
I know it's just fine.
I think there are aspects that we're not expertise in parking studies and what's the best, the best practices for parking and technology. So we were looking at maybe utilizing the consulting firm at a cheaper cost. I'm not even sure it would be $50,000 because the foundation is there to do that heavy lifting, and then whatever action items or implementation action items came out of that, then staff would, work toward implementing those, like whether we want to move forward with the lease, permanent parking, and what does that look like in process and fees and so forth, and then the public outreach and education. That was kind of our thoughts. We'll certainly go with whatever direction. We definitely can go ahead and distribute the existing parking study that was done for everyone that does not have it. We could also bring back in a few months some ideas for short-term solutions that we could go ahead and at least start working towards, since we do know that it is a parking concern.
Could we try, and this is a small part of it, the city owns an 18-spot parking lot at the corner of Church and Kroll. Those spots are never available to anyone ever, Monday through Friday, because they are occupied from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. by courthouse workers. There could possibly be 20 spots, and this is where a suggestion was made, that those spots be leased. Let's just say they're $1,000 a year. If you get rid of the curb cut that goes to Haines Street, you get 2 more spots. That'd be $20,000 a year that could go towards whatever, MSD, events downtown. Could we try that? And it's going to police itself. It's not going to need policing, because if you've paid your $1,000 and you've got a sticker and somebody's in your spot, you're going to have them towed. So it would just need a sign on it saying it was leased parking, paint a spot number on the spot, get ready a decal, and cash the check for 20 grand.
Ms. Steinbrenner, what is the ultimate goal that you're trying to, what are we trying to do with this downtown parking study? What are we looking for? Are we wanting someone to tell us what to do with our parking? I mean,
And the plus of this is it gets business owners and building owners off the street parking, where customers need the space.
And to be honest, this is more of y'all's discussion of parking, but I would say Planning opinion would be that we're looking to organize the parking in downtown to free up spots in front of businesses for the visitors. And then look at possibly, as the city manager mentioned before, and some of you have too, what are we starting to do with the residential parking that we're starting to have an increase of residents that are living downtown, and I'm sure they do have concerns about their parking, and it could be another idea over a short term is we do something similar for a certain amount of parking spaces in another lot for just the residents. There are I know there's different municipalities that do different things. I believe, I can't remember how many do the lease paid parking, Bryson, but we could look at, there's about 5 of them that we could look at how they're doing it and bring that back for discussion. Or if you're ready to make a decision to go in that direction, we could, look at all the municipalities, how they're doing it, and go ahead and plan a process.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we do that? Because I trust that we can figure out what to do with the parking. If it means enforcing a 2-hour parking on street or whatever it may be, you bring a suggestion to us. Because for me, to do a study for someone to tell me to do something, I'm still going to have to make a decision whether it's good or not. I think we're probably the best judge of what's actually going to work on Main Street and what's not. I know I'm not being presumptuous there.
I agree with David. I don't think we need another study, and I would love to see us stop kicking a can down the road and try that small lot, maybe the larger lot, because I think there are almost 40 spots at the other. See, it's Hanging Kroll and the Church of Kroll, right?
38 spots.
So with that being, I'm sorry, Lisa.
Go ahead.
With that being said, so do we require the owners of these apartments to pay for parking for their tenants? And then that way they will have a sign.
This is purely for those 2 lots
I
right
understand
there.
what you're saying, but I'm also asking, because I feel like we do need to provide parking for residents. So, but to do that, do we require the owners of these spaces to pay for the spaces so that they can have these assigned parking spaces? Where they, yes,
Come on, like-
yes, I'm talking about like the one warehouse apartment owner and the other apartment owners, like they can pay for spaces in the hanging parking lot for their tenants. And that way we are still recouping some funds for them to be able to have assigned parking.
Or at least they'd have the first option.
Absolutely.
Like at the Monroe Lofts, those are owner occupied.
Well, right across
So
the
they,
street.
they have the option to do an annual lease.
Yeah, I mean, that's, again, I think that we've heard that multiple times where these apartment owners they don't have a place to park. And so we could definitely, maybe open that up.
And just to clarify things too, like what we call the sheep garden parking area, which is on Main Street, it's still labeled no parking after 11 p.m., which is the most proximate parking to the 3 apartments that are above that art gallery. So, that's given a sense of unease to people living there, that they're living there, they're paying astronomical rent, and they're being told they can't park after 11 p.m.
They do, that building.
Actually, they're ready to park, not the street, so I think it's a good idea. We do look at the owners of these complexes, these facilities, and maybe have a plan where they, pay.
That they could lease. They
Yeah.
could lease one. Yeah, they could lease one.
That's what I'm saying, yes.
I think we can figure that out.
And directing, Commissioner Bryson to see if we can help us do that.
Sure.
Am I hearing consensus that you would like staff to evaluate a parking lease for those 2 parking lots?
Yes.
And can I throw in the idea of us possibly bringing in some additional short-term solutions for your consideration and bring it back to you in January? I don't want to do it in December.
October.
Councilman
No,
Carr.
bring back your suggestions for long and short term, we might as well at least talk about it.
I don't believe we will be ready in October to have the complete process, the fee structure, and that ready for October, but
Not the fee structure, so we know availability and suggestions, you got the short term solution, so we wouldn't expect you to have all of that fee schedule and everything that in.
So consensus from the council for you to be able to direct staff to start working towards leasing out these 2 parking lots and then looking at other short-term availability, or short-term meaning until we have a long-term plan in place, but for residences across city-owned parking lots.
I guess short-term meaning in the possibility it wouldn't be, it's complicated to implement. Increased parking fines, they're $5. I mean, code enforcement's parking fines went from $5 to $25 years ago because we were getting laughed at. Because, I mean, those are another example of a short, easy thing that we could do that would free up the parking in the on-street parking in Main Street, that if you're going to pay a higher fine, you may be less likely to stay there, taking up space.
When can we do that? Can we do that in November, October, November?
Give me a couple months, guys.
November.
Could we have that consensus citywide, but do an incubator to try that tiny parking lot, like as soon as possible?
We could do a pilot program.
Do a pilot, it's 18 spots. And then everything else be citywide.
Is there any legal aspects to that that we need to be aware of?
Right off the top of my head, the question is, can we legally do that? If we own the spots, I think we can rent out our spots.
So what I do know as a former downtown employee, that people were willing to get a $5 ticket and park there all day.
That's right.
So we do need to increase that citation, because I said this when I was working there, if the citation was higher for the first offense, then they may think twice about parking there. Because I think it was $5, and then I think the other ticket was $25. I thought that should have been reversed. I think the first ticket should be $25, and then if they get another one, they should be $5. Whatever the case, I just thought it was just ridiculous that it was only $5, because they laughed at it and they kept parking
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah.
So.
And that'd be the beauty of the lease lot, is it doesn't need enforcement, because the leaseholder is going to enforce it.
But I'm still saying, even on street parking, $5 is not enough.
Oh, yeah, I mean, like, the consensus part could deal with, what you want to charge and how you collect.
Yeah.
So why don't we just do this? Why don't we just see if there's a consensus for you to go ahead and have staff. Go ahead and have staff look at what other municipalities do. We'll put together the pilot program that Mr. Carter's talking about, as long as it's legal for us to do. And then, you come back in November, we'll have some short-term ideas, and we'll have the chance to change the parking fines to something that has a little more teeth to it, so that we can get people to move along with it.
Excellent. Excellent.
Can we add it to a piece about contacting the owners of the apartments and seeing if they're interested in purchasing spaces next door, or what
Do a
that
survey.
would look
Or
like?
leasing,
Just
or
start
leasing those
evaluating
spaces,
that,
leasing those
leasing it?
spaces by
We
years.
can definitely do a survey.
Okay, that's a start.
November.
November, she said.
Yes.
I think we're pushing it there.
All right, do we have consensus for all that said?
Yes.
Trust that Lisa knows what we want to say.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, council, Mark, you want to, we're pretty much done with all the presentations and all of those things. Do you want to rehash everything that we've gone over the past day?
Can we get a
But
consensus?
listen, it says Friday recap. It says Friday recap. The other thing too, though, then let's just do this real fast. There's a few things that we discussed that, before we leave today, that we wanted to help give, that Mark needs some direction on, right? And one of those things was, we were floating around ideas about putting that feather in our cap as far as the permit. Okay? And so I can just kind of open this up, council, just to some ideas and things that I'd heard, that we've done a little bit of research on. This was very intriguing to me that there was a business, I keep forgetting, I think it's Walmart or something along those lines. They were building a new plant, okay? It's almost a $400,000 or $400 million investment into whatever city that they were going to go into. And it boiled down to, I believe it was Statesville and Fort Mill or Rock Hill, okay? And at the end of the day, the reason why this corporation chose Statesville was not because of tax breaks, but was because of their permitting process. Their permit process that they tout is a 7-day permit process. And the CEO was interviewed, and he basically said that that is the reason why he chose that, because they don't need the building yesterday, they need it today. Because time is money. And so one of the things that we've heard consistently across the board, at no fault by any means to any individual, but it's just that we need to, sometimes the permitting process takes a long time. And we have a very involved and very busy department, by the way. Very busy department. I think that, Mark, you said it's what, 800 permits? So hats off to them, a month, 800 permits a month. And so they're crushing it in those regards. But one of the things that Mark is looking for direction on from us as a council is to start maybe potentially, is to start evaluating the operations and the process of the permitting department, to see what we can do to shrink down that timeline down to whatever that is. Is it 60 days, 30 days? You know, as far as Lisa's concerned, at least maybe 3 days or 4 days. Just joking. October, she left. But Mark needs direction from council, guys, and some idea and direction, and so I'm opening up the floor to talk about it and see what we can do to kind of clean this up, because if we do that, we believe we can be more business friendly for our entire city.
So I have another story. So when I was with the downtown department, I created an informal packet to help business owners to start the process of getting into their business. Kind of who to go talk to in permitting, who to go talk to as a restaurant, ABC and all the things, environmental. I think what we should do is have some type of step-by-step guideline of kind of these different things, open up a business in downtown road, you know, just some type of step-by-step, maybe some type of manual or something to really help people move through this process. And I think if we do that, you know, people understand, because let's face it, we have a lot of people who may want to own a business and have no idea how to do it. You know, just because you have a dream, it doesn't mean that you should suffer. And so I feel like if we have some type of guideline or manual to help you through that process, I think that can expedite a lot of the things in the permitting process. Because it's not necessarily permitting, I think it's just everybody understanding what they need and what they have to do to mitigate that process.
You know, I think, for me, I'd like to be walked through the process so I can see what it actually is. I think maybe we examine the process, there may be some steps that can be eliminated or combined. For me, I don't know enough about it to help make a decision.
It seems like I agree, and it would be helpful for us to give direction to Mark to be able to just evaluate the whole thing, come back and show us what the assessment is, and then we can take it from there. So I think it's a great idea.
I would agree with Julie and Sirlita. If you think it needs to be separated out, if you think you can make it 7 days, then jump on it. And also to go back to a more micro part of the planning, that is something we need to think about with downtown. When Franco was there, I remember with Jin, they went to him, he walked them through all their permits, he went with them to the Department of Agriculture. You know, it was like a one-stop. It's like a
concierge service.
But I mean, that was concierge for downtown, that's a niche of planning. But that's all a part of making downtown more attractive to people. But yeah, what you said, Mr. Watson.
If we can just get the how many are issued for what, how long it takes, just the basic numbers of it. Then we can sit down and put all these ideas together, and maybe there's some redundancies that we can take out. Maybe the forms are too complex. And to your point, I think when you go in for permitting, if it's a basic renovation to put in a kitchen sink or something easy, it should have benchmarks on it. In 30 days, you should be here. In 60 days, you should be here, and by 90, it should be approved, or whatever that may be. But we should set it right there and have the contact information, the next steps, and who it is, and that way they can just move along with it. But I think we need to start with the numbers first, and how long it takes.
Yes.
Okay.
So what I hear is that council would like to evaluate the permitting process from the standpoint of, just the basic numbers. How many are we processing? How long does it take to process them currently? What's the volume look like? Evaluate the steps, or at least document the steps in the process and those types of things. And through that, bring back to you some recommendations for improving that and possibly setting some goals for shortening that outline.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. What training, everything that's necessary to get that done. Yes.
Because, just like you said before, because the rumor is, oh, we have to jump through so many hoops to do business in Monroe, right? And so.
And that goes back to
That's
the perceptions,
right?
it takes us full circle back to the, we started this.
Right.
It's how do you want to be perceived, how are you perceived, and what are you doing to change it?
Yep.
And we use that as an opportunity to market that. This is a new process that we have, right? And this is how we've cleaned this up, and we name it our 30, 60, 90-day plan, or whatever we want to do. Okay, so consensus, council, for direction, okay? And then we have two more questions, and it's time to go. We had some individuals put these questions in. I'll start with this one here. This comes from a citizen. Is there a plan to slow or curtail the approval of new subdivisions? And what is the plan to ease traffic congestion at Hilltop? So I will open up the floor to council. Is there a plan to slow or curtail the approval of new subdivisions? And what is the plan to ease traffic congestion at Hilltop? And there's a little note here, especially with the proposed Eagles Rest development. Council?
So there is a transportation plan for the Hilltop intersection specifically related to Eagles Rest subdivision.
I think there's several different developers that are going to have to put into that intersection. I think coordinating that will be where the trick is, and that will be, or Ms. Stiver will tell you better than that. But the UBO, we've done quite a few things that, I don't know if they'll slow the approval, but they'll change the approval. The approval is always going to be up to the recommendation from the planning board in this body to actually approve it. So slowing it's not the problem. It's, in essence, determining where we want to grow and how we want to grow. We've implemented a from gross to net density change. We now, states anything that has more than 9 residences has to go through 2 public hearings. I mean, there are some things that have been put in place, open space has changed. So what you're going to see is different, and that will slow the actual residential growth. So I don't know if that answers your question, but there's been a lot of changes.
I don't know the answer to that or not. I don't know
Microphone.
if we can legally, I don't know if we can legally plan to slow it. All of it depends on whether or not it's passed. We get a recommendation from planning and if it's up to city council, but we can't legally plan to slow it.
Well, no, I don't think it's that. I think a lot of it has to do with, like I said, just understanding where it's at. There's 70-something hundred houses that are still left to be developed, and those are already approved. So those are something that we can't do anything about. But I think we've changed the way that they have to look and we reduce the amount of density, so.
Well, you know, a lot of the legislature determines a whole lot of that for us, so.
Lisa?
Just want to kind of comment on it a little bit. And just to ensure the new residential subdivisions coming to do projects it's drastically reduced due to probably the different text amendments that the city's been doing, some previous projects that may not have moved forward. So just to ensure that the staff is not getting in very little new inquiries. So what you're seeing right now are approvals that have already occurred, and they are just implementing from over the last several years. So we are seeing a slow. And then as far as Eagle Rest, yes, it's one developer. That Eagles Rest has a lot of transportation improvements that came out of their traffic impact analysis that will have to take place.
Lisa, is there any way that you can get us like the dates when some of these developments have been approved? So when people say that, we can say, this is not a new development, this actually was approved in such and such and such a date, right? Because I think the perception again is that you're approving all of these developments, and just like you just stated, they're not necessarily from this year, they've been years out.
We do. We have a master list or spreadsheet that we kind of keep track of all the development and when they were submitted, if they're in site design, under construction, and so forth. We have that available. We also do have that new interactive development map that we work with the Geographic Information Department to create, and it has all the details of every project that's gone through the process within the last 2016 to now.
Is that something that the
It
city
is
can
online.
access? Okay. So just help me to get to that, so, because I want to share that with people. 'Cause we hear
I'll
about-
email all of council the link so you can know exactly where to go directly to that.
Thank you. Next question. How does council envision Monroe's future growth? How does council envision Monroe's future growth? Everybody tired?
Yes.
Yes.
Just for the record, the council set up here vibrant. I think it's exciting, personally. I think that we are, in my opinion, the municipality to live in Union County and locally around Charlotte. There's a lot of potential. Many businesses want to move here. We have, we provide all the major public services here, and it's exciting to see that as a resident here for over 30 years, how many people want to come into this wonderful city that is very diverse, that has so much potential for business, and being outside of a major metropolitan area, we have an authentic downtown, right? And so we have authenticity. We have authentic people here too, right? Because sometimes in that hustling and bustling of a big city, you end up missing the friendly attitude, the authentic attitude of individuals, that when you're walking down on the sidewalk here in Monroe, people will stop and they'll talk to you. They'll ask you how your day is, and it's just not in passing. They really want to know. So I'm very encouraged about our vibrant, authentic growth of Monroe. I want to say, thank you. Okay, at this time, I'm gonna, one last word from everybody, and we'll start with Councilman Anthony. And just want to, your closing thoughts on this 2 days.
My thought is I'm extremely tired, I hope you all have a safe, happy weekend.
Councilman Carter.
I think everybody's a little fatigued, but it has been tremendously successful. Thank everybody for being here, and I look forward to the results of this 48 hours.
Councilwoman
I
Thompson.
concur with these two, and I'll just add that it's been a very productive 2 days, and I appreciate all the hard work that's gone into making this happen.
Councilman Dodson.
I just appreciate all the hard work that everybody's put into it, and I know that we're all tired, but I can't think of any other time that I've been involved in any level of decision-making that I've seen as much information get digested and used in a productive way as what we've done the last 2 days.
Councilman McGee.
Yes, sir. Second, third, fourth, and fifth, that you guys have said, and I want all of us to have a good weekend and get some rest and do some fun.
All right, and I'll just end, would you?
I was just going to say, update on the officer that was hurt earlier today. The suspect tried to hit him with a automobile. He glancing blow on the leg. He was taken to the hospital and he's just been released. And we don't have update on the suspect.
And I'll end by saying, may God bless this great city. And I'm thankful for every one of you here and everyone in this room. So with that, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn. Oh, that was incredibly eager. I have a motion and a second. Those in favor? Thank you. Have a great weekend.